Johnny, Proof. So you got Johnny now. You got Proof in the picture. You got Jay Dilla. You got Mr. Porter, Denaun from D12. All these guys coming up out of the city who's cool with Johnny. So I would go with Johnny to meet all these different dudes. You feel what I'm saying? To the point where I ended up being a part of the building of Jay Dilla's last recording studio out here in Clinton Township. We built Jay Dilla's studio out here, which was the very last studio that he had in Detroit, or in this, around the city of Detroit. I became a part of that historic process.
Wow. It's talking to you off camera, we was discussing a lot of different things, but through those relationships and all that, you formed a relationship, maybe through the mosque or whatever, but with a guy that's becoming pretty famous. And tell me something about that, and what was your relationship, and how did you what is his name?
Jay Electronica.
So you're a Muslim?
Yep, I am.
How did you become that based off this Christian family that you come through? What was your introduction?
I met a brother in Florida when I moved to Florida in '94 named Bakim. Went by the name Bakim. He was a radiologist, actually, but he was also a 5%er. And I was always interested in other religions, though I came from a Christian family. A friend of mine, my cousin introduced me to Rastafarianism, and I started following because I always was kind of like, I'm black, but who am I beyond the skin color of being black? Who am I? Where do I come from? What is the lineage? So my cousin introduced me to Rastafarianism. My boy Mark, who was in our group, he was interested in Islam also. So he gave me my first look at Islam. But I never grasped what it was until I moved to the States in '94, and I met with this producer, Bakim, who was also a radiologist, who put me up on game, and he was a 5%er. So I was always wondering, everything was God this, God that, God body, God, So that was interesting to me. Then we was like always the black man this, the black man that. And I was like, hold on, I like this language. I'm black. As a matter of fact, I'm extra dark. What's up with that? Let me find out who I am. So he started, teaching me and giving me little books and stuff from the messenger, from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And I started reading and stuff like that until I eventually made my way into the mosque, started learning more and more and more.
Okay. How did you come in contact with your brother, your friend, Jay Electronica, and what's the relationship?
Through Johnny, another relationship. When I moved in with Johnny, I think it had to have been maybe 2001. 2001. Me and Johnny, I moved in with Johnny. We was building the studio, Sound Asylum. And I moved into the studio with Johnny because he moved in. It was turning this whole house on Hartwell. If you hear Jay Electronica's song, where he mentions Hartwell in that song, Exhibit C, it was right there on Hartwell, 14844 Hartwell. That's what he's talking about. Sound Asylum, and Johnny and Jamal Evans own that studio. I moved in there. At the time, a lot of the celebrity coming out of the city of Detroit came through that studio. Because like I said, Johnny was really popular with the brothers here in the city of Detroit because he was the guy who sold the equipment from Guitar Center to him. So anyhow, Johnny and Jay Electronica happened to be friends from Atlanta in the mosque, or from Morehouse, I think, on Morehouse campus when Johnny went to Morehouse. They met and they were cool, whatever. So when I moved up here and moved in with Johnny, he would always be like, man, Cello, he was also a fan of my work as a producer. But he would always say, I got the right rapper for you to produce, man. I really got the right rapper. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. He was like, nah, bro, I got the right rapper. And he would always say it's this guy named Jay Electronica, or Jeree. We know him. I know him as Jeree. I didn't know him as Jay Electronica really. I knew him as Jeree, so we called him Jeree because he went by the name Jeree Allah. And anyhow, shortly after that, we were friends with this sister named Nikki, Sister Afiza now I think she calls herself. She ended up leaving, hanging out with us at the studio, and then leaving to go to Philly school. She runs into, I think, a barbershop in Philly, and Jay Electronica happened to be in the barbershop. Talks. She's from Detroit. She's like, I'm from Detroit, whatever. And he was like, oh, I got some friends from Detroit. Do you know this guy named Johnny? She was like, yeah, I was just with Johnny and them, blah, blah, blah. He was like, what? I'm trying to find Johnny, just as Jay Electronica. He reaches out. Johnny was like, yo, we got the studio. It's finished. What you gonna do? I swear it was like maybe a day or two. My man was here in the city. Moved in to the Sound Asylum with me and Johnny. So at the time, it was me, him, and Johnny living at the Sound Asylum. And that's how he and I became friends. So when he came, telling you about. So I'm like, okay, I'm skeptical at the time too about his rap skills or whatever. But my man Rhyme, I'm like, yo. It took me right back to Rakim. I'm like, damn. Yo, my man is dope. This dude he is the truth. So I was like, okay, Johnny's right. So me and him, we automatically connected because Johnny was not a producer. Johnny was the studio owner, and he was good, and he is really good at bringing people together. So me and Jay Electronica connected, and I would produce for him, and he would write, and we would just record. I never seen nobody with a work ethic like Jay Electronica in the studio, though. My man would record for days. I'm talking about for days, like literally, non-stop record. He would write rhyme after rhyme after rhyme after rhyme. As fast as you can feed him a beat, he would write to it. So a lot of the earlier stuff of Jay Electronica, I worked on, I produced on, I engineered on. Before Mike Chavaria, who kind of everybody's seen, I was the engineer, I was the producer behind it. I was the guy that worked with Jay Electronica a lot because it was just me, him, and Johnny at the studio. Shav was the guy, Mike Chavaria, everybody know him from being with Jay Electronica. He came in, he was the guy, he was a young, want-to-be engineer at the time. He also worked at Guitar Center with Johnny. So that's how he came in. He was the guy that helped us wire up the studio and all that stuff. So, but he was never a music producer. He wanted to be an engineer, so he leaned more towards that side. So when he came in as an engineer, he was the engineer for the Sound Asylum. Later on, after I kind of just leaned more towards the production side, and he came in as the engineer. So him and Jay Electronica kind of got really cool also. So all of us here at the Sound Asylum is doing our thing. Then came now Grammy nominated Brandon Williams. And he moved in to the Sound Asylum. So all of us is here. So me, Johnny, Jay Electronica, and Brandon Williams is living in the Sound Asylum at the same time. So we kind of started building from there. And that's kind of how me and Jay got tight. We ended up living together, I think, for 3 years.
Really?
Yeah, like 3 years, me and Jay Electronica stayed in the studio because we were the last. Johnny moved out eventually, and me, and I think, yeah, me, Brandon, and Jay Electronica stayed in the house, and we kept the house and with the studio because Brandon took a room, I had a room, and we kind of did it like that.
Wow, that's awesome. What's going on? Are you producing him now? Like what's going on with y'all thing now?
No, I haven't really heard from the brother in many years. I mean, I haven't really heard from Jay Electronica since the Rock Nation deal.
Okay. So how could y'all be so close at one time and live together, and then what happened?
Man, I don't know. Really and truly, the honest truth is I don't know. I don't remember ever having an argument or a disagreement with Jay Electronica. Me and dude was really, really close. I'm the person that introduced him to Mr. Porter, to Denaun, which really led to the success that now people see. people don't know this story. I introduced him through Mike Chavaria being an engineer working for Denaun, or working in between Sound Asylum and Mr. Porter Productions. I brought him over. At one point, he asked me to come with us because I was a young producer also under Denaun, learning from Denaun, Mr. Porter, learning from him. I would be at his house like every day. I was at Denaun's house almost every day. We were there, me and Mike Chavaria. And one day, Jay Electronica asked us to go over, to come with us. And like I said, he was, when we were talking off camera, he was really Johnny's artist. So I didn't really want to step out of line and take him to somebody else's studio and sever my relationship with Johnny. But he was like, man, I want to go. So he was like, I'm coming with y'all. So I went and I was like, okay, bro, let's go, because I got to go over here to do something. I was doing some beats over there. And that I did a beat with Big Dame at the time, who was also a Denaun Mr. Porter artist. And Mr. Porter at the time, I think, was, yeah, he was Mr. Porter's artist. And it was me and a couple other dudes who was producing under Mr. Porter. But I did this song with Big Dame, who was a rapper, really dope, man, dope rapper from the city of Detroit. And I brought Jay Electronica over. That same day, Jay Electronica jumped on the song. Prior to that, he was on one of my records. Because I gave him his first stage show, so I put Jay Electronica on his first show. He was performing with me on the song that was released in 2004 on off of my imported album. But Big Dame and Jay Electronica did the song together. Denaun heard it from downstairs. I was super impressed with what he had put on the song. I was like, yo, let me work with dude. And from there they built a relationship, which led to a number of other things, you know what I'm saying? But Jay and I we were still tight, you know, we were cool. But like I said earlier, we had going back to your question, what happened? I don't know what happened, but me and him lived together for 3 years, and right up to the point where he left to move to New York, to the Source, to go to the Source magazine, really.
Why would he leave Detroit working with y'all and then go to the Source magazine? What is that about?
Well, at the time, after him and Denaun got really cool, he would be with Denaun a lot because Denaun was impressed with his rapping skills. As an MC, who wouldn't be impressed with him? He's pretty awesome as a rapper. And Denaun was is a really awesome music producer. One of the best producers of hip hop music I've ever heard is Denaun Porter. And I tell anybody that. Anybody. He is awesome. And I learned a lot working just the short time I worked under him. Jay would travel with Denaun a lot after they got cool. Because he was almost to the point where he was almost he became like a Denaun artist, like a Mr. Porter artist. And Mr. Porter would get lots of beats, you know what I mean? And even because D12 was also still popular at the time. D12 was hot at the time, as a matter of fact. And you had a lot of producers also. Tech Nine. I remember Tech Nine sending beats. The Neptunes would send beats over to the house to Mr. Porter, and we would get to listen to all this fresh music coming, and Jay Electronica would just write rhymes to everything. If D12 didn't get it or didn't want it, he was like, oh, I'll take that. You know what I mean? I remember Knots at the time as a producer sending stuff, and Jay Electronica would just write all to everything. You know what I mean? He would write to every record, he could find. He was always that guy. He was much like M at the time. I remember being in the studio with M also, and M was very much like that. He was always writing. You know, I go to the studio every blue moon with Denaun and M would always be writing same way. I was the fly on the wall, as a matter of fact. Nobody really knew who I was and cared. at the time, besides Denaun, who knew, because he was the reason I was there anyhow. But anyhow, so Jay Electronica always carried a camera with him. Always. No matter where he went, he had this video camera, this video cam. And just so happened, the year M signs 50. Right? I can't quite remember the year, but the year that M signed 50, Jeree and his camera ends up on 9 Mile at the studio with Denaun. Caught Denaun or D12 or some of the members of D12, I think it was, and them making fun of the way 50 spoke or the way he rapped. And Jay caught that on his camera haphazardly, because he would go to the studio with you and he would sit down and record everything on his camera. He would just sit in the corner. He was always a kind of quiet kind of guy. He never really was an outspoken kind of person. He would just sit down and record with his camera, and he'd just be there doing his thing, and then he'd bring it back to the studio. We would watch it, we would laugh, whatever. Just so happened at this time, he caught M and D12 making fun of 50. And he came home that night. I remember it very vivid. And he was like, yo, God, look at what I got. Look what I got. Like, I got this. Like, you ain't gonna believe this. At the time, M's beefing with Benzino. He's like, you ain't gonna believe what I got, man. So we go, he puts it on the, he rewinds it or whatever. And I can see in the studio they're making fun of the way 50 talks and this kind of stuff. And he was like, yo, God, what am I gonna do with it? I'm like, I don't know. At the time, I'm like, I don't know first. Then I thought about it. I was like, man, we broke. We can get money with this. You know what I mean? But the following day, I think Denaun calls, and he's like, yo, M wants that footage of you recording him or recording us at the studio. He really needs that footage. And he got really antsy about it, I think this was a part of the deterioration of my relationship at Denaun then, even though later on me and Denaun, I think we kind of got back cool, because really it wasn't nothing, I didn't do anything, but he, Jay Electronica had this footage. But Denaun would call and he would be like, yo, I need this footage. I need the footage. Where Jeree at? I need to get that footage. And Jeree knew what he had. He knew what he was sitting on. And he didn't want to just give that up. You know what I mean? He didn't want to give that up because he knew what he had. Because at the time, this big beef, M and Benzino. Right? So, here what happened. So, I think, I remember them calling the studio. Denaun, M saying, I'm gonna send a car to the studio to get the footage from you, or to bring you over to get the footage. And Jay was like, yo, I ain't going over there. He said, Cello, first he asked me, he was like, you want to go? I'm like, go? And I'm like, nah, M got bodyguards, like big bodyguards. Even though I knew him at the time from being around Denaun and that crew, I was like, these dudes is big. Like, nah, we ain't gonna do that, bro. So he was like, what we gonna do? He said, we gonna call the source. I said, okay, let's do this. So he was like, nah, Cello, you call. So I called. I made the call to the source. And the lady answered the phone. I don't know who she was, probably a secretary at the time. If she could remember, it was me. I answered the phone. I said, I am Cello. And she said, I want to talk to Dave Mays. And she said, what makes you think you can talk to Dave Mays just like that? I said, tell him I got on camera M and D12 making fun of 50 cents, because this is what Jay's telling me to do. So I'm like, okay, we going to get money out of this. Let's do it. So he says, okay. So she said, really? I said, yeah, we got it on camera. she puts the call through to Dave. As she does that, Jay snatches the phone from me, and he talks to her, or talks to him, or whoever comes on the phone. I assume it to be Dave Mays. He comes on the phone, and he was like, okay, I need to see it. Send it out here. And he was like, nah, I ain't sending it. He's like, nah, y'all ain't going to get me like that. I'm not sending it. He said, send me a clip. He's like, nah, I'm coming out. He was like, okay, we'll come out to New York then. At the time, Durati and this guy named Darius Ellington was managing me. And quasi-managing Jay Electronica at the time. And he was like, okay, what y'all want to do? I said, okay, we got this. At the time, Johnny knew we had the footage. Jamal knew we had the footage. Our crew knew we had the footage. And we knew at the time it was valuable. You know what I mean? Really, me and Jay kind of conspired the whole thing. Because he came home, he didn't know what to do with it. At the time, I'm like, we broke. What we going to do? He's like, okay, call the source. So we did that. But he didn't want to do it. I did it. So anyhow, following morning, I venture to say the following morning, he comes downstairs. He's like, brother, I'm going to New York. At the time now, we just recorded what a lot of music that you hear on the internet right now from Jay Electronica. I either produced on, I engineered. I mean, at the time, I'm not good of an engineer at that time. I'm just learning it. We recorded on Mackey's at the time, Mackey Digital Board, D8B. And, but Shav was also working with us. And, yeah, at that time, he had pressed up a freaking... He pressed up so many CDs. He was just taking. He was like, I'm taking my music with me, and we going. Okay, cool. So Darius, he came downstairs following morning. He was like, yo, let's make Salat. Me and him get on the mat, and we make Salat. And after making Salat, Darius is standing in the room to bear me witness. He turns around, he hugs me. And he said, brother, when I get on, you're going to be the first person I call. You hear me? At the time, my now wife was pregnant with my son. And I was thinking she was getting so much flack from her family. This is just how close we were, me and Jay. She was getting so much flack from her family about her being pregnant. We were thinking about, at least we had talks about aborting the baby. And Jay Electronica, Jeree, came up to me one time, upstairs before he left, and he said, brother, if you abort this child, Allah would punish you. Thank God for that, brother. To this day, my son is 14 years old. He's here today. You know what I mean? If nothing else, I got to say, and thanking God for for the brother being a part of my life, was I got a son to show for it. My son, Musana Nasir Ali.
You mean to tell me he never came back and got you?
Nah. This is what I'm telling you. So, here we go. We make Salat. He hugs me. Darius gives him, I think it was $160 to get the Greyhound from Detroit to New York. He hugs me, said, brother, when I get on, you're going to be the first person I call. First person I come and look for is you, Cello. To this day, I have not heard from the brother one time. You hear me? Not once. I heard all the stories through other people of what was happening with his career. I was excited. You know what I mean? Even right to the point when he did the deal with Rock Nation. You know what I mean? That deal, there's a lot of people in that deal, man. You know, a lot of people always talk about that deal, you know, and how that happened. It didn't happen just out of thin air. You know, you had him with Rashad Ringo tumbling dice, and Derek Prosper was a part of that. Dream Hampton, you know what I mean? All of them was a part of making that deal happen. And so a lot of people, was a part of making that deal happen that my man never looked out for. And I would venture to say to this day, he ain't looked back at none of those persons to help nobody who made that deal happen.
Not one?
Not one. Because to this day, I'm still cool with Tumbling Dice. I'm still cool with with Derek Prosper. Dream and I was never really close, but she was a part of the deal. You know what I mean? But I'm sure they will concur with me in what happened in terms of him not looking back. Because, like I said, the one time that I remember after that happening was he told Johnny that he was going to send me the Source had them jackets with all the prints and all that other stuff with Biggie's face on it and all this stuff. He said, I'm going to send you one of those jackets. I never got the jacket.
You know what's funny about this story is you're a producer. Why in the world, when he used your production skills to put you on, it wouldn't take nothing out of his pocket just to mention your name and let it be known? What is it?
Brother, I don't know, man. I don't know what's up with the guy, man. I never really, like I said, to this point, he and I have never been on the phone one time since this point. With the exception of, I would say, M was putting out a mixtape. I was still a producer working under Denaun. And M was doing a mixtape. And there was a song that I think M used a verse of his on for his mixtape. And I had mentioned it to Johnny that M was putting out a mixtape, and it was dope that he was using Jay Electronica's verse on the song. Johnny told Jay Electronica, and he got us on a three-way. And he came on the phone, and he was like, Johnny was on the phone, and me and Jay was on the phone. He was like, yo, Cello, tell him what you said. I said, so I said, M is doing a mixtape, and he got one of your verses on the mixtape. And he was like, yo, if he used my motherfucking verse, I'm suing him. I'm suing. If he ever uses my shit on his records, he put out anything with me, I'm suing him. This time he's in New York. And I think he was hanging out with Michael Knight at the time and Erykah Badu. But he was starting to make waves, in the music industry. So, because once he got to New York, stuff started moving. Because he had this footage, but that footage helped him to meet Michael Knight. I think he met Michael Knight at the Source, who introduced him to Erykah Badu, blah, 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 and the story goes on. But like I said, I would hear the story through Johnny, who was always the glue between us. You see what I'm saying? So to this point and to this date, I don't know what happened between me and the God. I mean, like I said, and when we were talking off camera, I told you I reached out to him earlier this year and told him, brother, whatever I have done to wrong you, I apologize for. You know what I mean? Because so much people, there's so many other persons who know our story around. I know my relationship with Jay Electronica. Me and Dude was tight, man. Like, really, we was tight. We lived for years. If I cooked, he was always vegetarian. I ate meat. At least I ate chicken. I was the cook in the house. If I cooked a pot with chicken for me, I made a vegetarian pot for my brother. And that's word is bond. You feel me? I always, and Brandon would bear me witness because he was there. You feel me? I made a separate pot for him. And when he got the deal, this was the kicker for me though. When I was like, damn. He got the deal with Rock Nation. Everybody was excited. Our whole team was excited. I was excited for Dude, you know what I mean? Even though to this point I hadn't heard from him for a couple of years, with the exception of the three-way call about the verse on M's mixtape. I was excited for him. I'm like, okay, maybe this is something we gon' eat. He sends for a team to produce the album. He calls for Am Fiddler. He calls for Brandon Williams, who lived in the house with us. He calls for Johnny. He calls for everybody, a bunch of other producers. I think the guys from Kanye's team went with him and he took all of them to this studio in South Africa. Everybody went except me. He called for everybody except me. At this point, I'm like, hold on, what the fuck is going on? Like, what did I do? You know what I'm saying? I'm like, okay, what's going on? You know what I mean? I don't know what happened. I think this had to have been like maybe this is shortly before I moved to Atlanta in '06. So this '05 maybe somewhere around there. I'm like, okay, what the fuck is going on? Like, yo, what did I do to you? Like, me and you made salat before you left. We got on the prayer mat and we made prayer. You know what I mean? Because at the time, I didn't even really know how to make prayer that good. He was in the mosque, you know, so he knew a whole lot more than I know. I'm coming from 5%'s teachings into the Nation of Islam. You feel me? So he is like, yo, he's helping me along, you know, and that's how we blended. We got so tight, you know what I mean? Because he had all the teachings, and I would bounce questions off of him. Whatever I didn't know, he knew. Or he was also in the Nation. So he knew where I was coming from and where I was going. You know what I mean? So he was able to help me along. You know what I mean? And on top of that, Johnny was in the Nation. You know what I mean? So all of us were brothers, you know, in that way. So they were teaching me as I'm the young cat in the crew. So he, again, back to the story. I think it was '05. He sends for everybody with the exception of me. And I don't hear from him. I don't hear nothing from him. At that point, I tried reaching out to him on every social media platform that I could to find out. My wife is like, yo, what happened with you and Jeree? I'm like, I don't know. You know what I mean? As a matter of fact, Jeree and my wife kind of got really tight and really cool. She would come over and work out with him in the morning to the house. You know what I mean? Like literally, like my wife was into Tybo. Tybo was still popular at the time. She was into Tybo. She'd bring her Tybo VCR tapes over, and her and Jay Electronica would get down in the living room doing their little Tybo thing, you know what I mean? And they were cool, you know what I mean? So she was always like, what happened to your brother? Like, what happened to you and the brother? Like, I didn't know. Brother, to this day, God is my witness. Word is bond to Allah. I don't know what happened. I never ever remember having an argument with Jay Electronica or a disagreement that was of anything major. You hear me? I fed that man every day.
How fast they forget.
That's how it happens.
How fast
and like I said, forget. To this day, you know, a lot of brothers in the Nation and who know our story and know me and him was so tight, it's like, yo, man, you got to square things out with you and your dude. You know what I mean? Like, yo, you really got to square it up, man. Like, y'all got to get back together. And it wasn't until this year, I think it was earlier this year, if I'm not mistaken, earlier this year, I went on Facebook because he befriended me on Facebook. And I was like, what's that about? And I said to him, I said, brother, please forgive me for whatever our past was, whatever I may have done. And he said, he said, brother, there's nothing wrong. He said, there's nothing to be forgiven. He said, you're my brother for life or something like that. And I got the message, I'm sure it's in Facebook. And he said, there's nothing to be forgiven. He said, how's your family? I said, I'm well. My family is well. And I'm working with, I got a little girl group called Super Cute. And I sent him the video and asked him to share the video of my little girl group called Super Cute. And that's it, man. I to this day, in 2018, I think it's what, November the something, the 8th, the 19th, 12th, something, I have not heard from my brother one time. I don't know what happened, and I can't tell you because I don't know what I did or what he did, but man, I always loved the brother.
Well, that's fine. We'll see if the world want to hear about it, and we'll see where it take it. You're a super producer, a super songwriter, and none of it ever even matter because you go get your blessings anyways.